Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second webinar for May 2025. We did one on May Day. Today, we're going to be exploring career options for third space practitioners. We have a packed panel. We've got Elaine Huber here is going to be doing the hosting honours. So I'll get through my bit as quickly as possible. Just like to acknowledge that the traditional owners of the land on which many of us are meeting today, in my case, it's the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and I'd like to pay my respect to any elders past, present, and emerging, and obviously anyone joining us in the meeting as well. And please feel free to acknowledge where you're coming from in the chat if you so choose. For those who haven't been to one of our webinars before, we are the TELedvisors network. We're a community of practitioners or people working in mainly tertiary education in roles which facilitate better learning and teaching. So this includes learning design, academic development, educational technologies, and similar areas. If you're interested in this field, if you're not already a member, please do feel free to join us. bit.ly/join TELedvisors, all lowercase. So I'm going to stop sharing at this point, and I am going to hand over to Elaine.
Thanks, Colin. Can everyone see my screen? Just move it so I can see you. Okay. I'd also like to begin today by acknowledging the Wangal people of the Eora Nation, traditional custodians of the land on which I'm coming from today, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. And I also acknowledge the connections to land, sea, and community, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. Okay, so I guess many here know me and maybe many don't. I'm the Vice President of ASCILITE at the moment. I've been on the exec for about 5 years now. And I've been part of the ASCILITE community for a lot longer than that, maybe 15 years, I think. I have worked at a number of universities across Sydney, so Macquarie, UTS, University of Sydney, and I'm currently stepping out of my traditional role, and I've started a consulting business, which I'll talk to you more about later. But I offer coaching, career coaching. So that's one of the reasons I was keen to do this webinar today when I spoke to Colin. So there's some of the things that we're going to cover. I'll give you you'll hear from me for a short amount of time, maybe 10 minutes. And then I'm going to pass over to some of our guest speakers who are going to talk us through their career journeys and then give you the opportunity to ask some questions. Okay, so I'm sure most of you know what third space work is, because most of you are probably in it or interested in being in it. As we know, it's a spectrum, and we all sit along that spectrum in different shapes. We might have the pure academic role at one end and the pure professional role at the other end. And there's a whole range of different role descriptors of people who do this third space work. And you might like to share in the chat if you wanted to. I've put some typical role names on the screen there. So learning designers, academic developers, there's a whole range, and I'm sure you've got something like that or in addition. It's a term that we know was popularized by Celia Whitchurch, but many others have written about this, especially there's a growing demand for third space workers more recently, And some of those wonderful people who've written about this and who might even be doing their PhD in this area are with us today. You know, there's obviously Kate Mitchell, Colin Simpson, Chie Adachi, and there's many more. So there's a growing understanding of these roles, but they're complex because they do all have these different titles and these different levels and these different set of skills. But I believe that this complexity is actually our superpower. You might have heard the expression of third space workers who are boundary spanners. A term I heard recently was edge walkers. So we kind of circuit around situations and roles and scenarios and bring people together. So those super skills I was talking about, that ability to build trust, to be relational, to bring different parties together to move things forward, to be innovative, to help people grow and learn and adapt, are definitely superpowers that we have. And the other thing that I think is very important about what we do is that ability to influence. Not everybody has an official title as a manager or a leader, but I believe that all of us in these roles do strategically influence. We might influence people to change their teaching, to take on new methodologies, to try new tools, digital tools. But we all do this quite often without the official authority to do so. But that's how we get things done. So what kind of places can we go? I've put a few of them up on the screen. There's probably many more. And some of you will be in some of these situations at the moment, but you might be interested in moving to others. And we're going to hear in a little while from people in some of these different areas. But with complexity, there is always challenge. Because the roles are not clearly defined, neither are the pathways to progress your career. There are opportunities, but often they're hidden and they're not clear how to find them. There's also ambiguity around our identity. I'm sure you've heard many people say, I'm sure all of us have heard someone say, oh, what is it that you do? You know, or don't quite get what you do because you don't fit neatly into a little square or a pigeonhole or because as I say, all of these roles, it is very complex and they're so different across the different institutions. And within institutions, there might be certain cultural barriers or status expectations placed on third space workers. So we have to navigate all of this, and it's hard. So we're hoping today to give you a little bit of clarity, give you some ideas, and help you overcome some of these challenges when you're thinking about your own career progression. So like I said, your strengths are your solutions, and the things that you need to reflect on and think about are the skills that you have. And, you know, I've just listed a couple of them on the screen, but I'm pretty sure most of us here have very sound digital skills. And as we know, that the importance of this is getting more and more prominent as we progress faster and faster in a technological world. And we also lead, like I said, maybe not in formal terms, but we do lead strategically and across functions, across disciplines. And we're able to sort of sit on the margin, sit on the boundary, and take a perspective and see things that happen in different areas and bring that knowledge and that forward into new, walk the edge into new spheres and be strategic. So you probably never think of yourself in these ways, or not often, because you're busy. The other strength I think that we have in the third space is we're doers. We do a lot of work, and it often goes unseen. We'll talk about more of that later. So enough from me for now. Let's hand over to our 5 speakers. I've asked each of them to talk for about 5 minutes, and I've given them a bit of a structure on the left there to sort of introduce themselves. So I won't go into too much detail about who they are. I'll let them tell you. And I've done in no particular order other than alphabetical. And I will now hand over to Amy.
Thanks, Elaine. So my role, I have two roles at the moment. I'm the Educational Technology Adoption Manager here at QUT. And outside of that, I am the Vice President of the Board for the Australian Institute of Training and Development. So it has allowed me to sort of keep a foot into the world outside of higher ed. My third space background, I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version, and it will become obvious as to why when I get to the second question. So I started my career in technology, and it wasn't in higher ed. I started in banking. I also worked in government, defence industry before moving into higher ed. I got into education through teaching IT. So I started teaching IT at a dual sector university and found that I loved the education side of that experience. And so I studied more in education and learning design, and that led me into more learning design and learning technology roles. 7 years ago, when I was in between higher education roles, I joined the Australian Institute of Training and Development as a professional member, and I did that to build my connections with the learning and development industry. And when I moved back into higher education, I also joined ASCILITE, and I found both organisations have been really great opportunities to network and connect with others in the industry. Now the why and how as to why I have such a varied background. My partner's in the Royal Australian Air Force, so that means we move quite frequently. So every few years I have to pretty much reinvent myself or find a new role, because not a lot, well, at least until COVID, not a lot would actually allow you sort of to move with your work. So work with whenever I moved into state. So I don't really get a choice in that we're moving unless I want to live apart from my partner and my family. The experience of moving every few years has actually made me really think about the transferable skills that I have across that industry. So that's something that I definitely encourage you to explore, because even though there's so many different job titles, you'll find that the underlying skills that form those positions within the third space realms are very similar. I've also found that I started volunteering for AITD late in 2018. So I joined as a professional member, and then I chose to start volunteering with them. I found by volunteering, I was able to build connections in the industry quite quickly, and you get to know people, they get to know you. And that's been really valuable in whenever I've had to move or whenever I'm in between contract roles. At some stages I was in contract roles. It actually helped me get that next contract. So for a while I was in consulting and freelance roles, and that word of mouth that you build through networking has been invaluable for that. So definitely highly recommend joining a professional association for that reason. From my experience, because I'm moving, it also actually helped me feel like I had a tribe whenever I moved. So as I moved from South Australia to Queensland, I was able to, join my AITD community and go to events and meet new people and build connections. So I'm not here to sell professional networks, but I do find that they're really, really valuable in terms of if you are looking for your next role. So that third question, so what skills helped? For a while there, whenever I moved, I was sort of just trying to get to a role, like to be employed. I didn't really give much thought to career progression until I spoke to a career development practitioner that said that you can move and still build your career. And so I do highly recommend that as a option if you aren't sure of how to do that yourself. Working with a practitioner allowed me to sort of really identify those transferable skills and identify that even if I am moving, I can still look for that next stage in my career. I found so much value in that I actually ended up going and studying career education. So it's really a really good experience if you're interested in that area. If you don't want to actually go off and do that study, my next bit of advice on that would be to get familiar with competency and capability frameworks. So there is a really broad one called the Skills for the Information Age, SOFIA, and I'll pop a link in the chat if you're interested in it. That I found that framework allowed me to sort of identify what my transferable skills were across industries. But there are a lot of different frameworks out there, so find something that suits you. If you are interested in moving into a different role, talk to other people in those roles. So if you are looking at a different industry, find somebody in that industry through LinkedIn or through events if you're going to an event. Understanding the differences and the similarities between positions is really useful. So as an example, I have worked in corporate education. They tend to use the terms learning and development. They don't use education, but a lot of the skills that sort of underlie those, the positions between a learning designer in higher ed and a learning and development advisor within corporate education, there are a lot of transferable skills, but the terminology might be different. So by speaking to people in those industries, you can sort of ascertain how you might need to adjust your application to really target those roles. And my other piece of advice, if you're looking to build your skills, is to really learn about strategy. So Elaine did talk about that strategic impact, but also look about that strategic impact and how it might relate to organisational goals, because if you can communicate that value, it definitely allows you to sort of advance your career in those areas. My advice has sort of been peppered throughout that chat, but my key pieces of advice outside of that would be to go to conferences and build your network. So even consider conferences that might not be specifically related to your role. So obviously we have the ASCILITE conference that's very popular for us. But consider whether you might want to go to like a learning and development conference, and if you're looking to transfer into an industry that's outside of higher education. It's definitely, I've found it really valuable both to learn from the presenters, but also to network with people attending. I've had some great conversations and some lifelong friends that I've met from people at conferences, and been able to build that and work with some of those people on projects. So very valuable. And just the word of mouth, as I mentioned, like if you're building those connections, that word of mouth connection, word of mouth job opportunities are real. So a lot of the time I have had where I've just been talking about that I'm in between contracts, or I'm finishing up a project, and then I'd get a call or an email to say, hey, we heard this, and are you interested in this project that's coming up? So being vocal about what your next career steps are, I'd highly recommend that if you're looking to move roles. And if you are in your current role and you're looking for that next sort of stage, explore what opportunities might be available internally. So perhaps you might hear that there's a project that's happening within the organisation that you're working with. Let your leaders know and say that you want to get involved, because those sort of opportunities can help you build your skills that can help you move into that next role. That's probably the biggest tips that I have, other than if you're not sure where to start, go and speak to a qualified career practitioner. The way that they can help you sort of understand your own skills and help you build a career plan has been invaluable for me, and I think it's something that I would highly recommend to anyone that's interested. And I think that's 5 minutes. I wasn't counting. I hope it was. It was under, just over. I don't know.
Thanks, Amy. That's fantastic. Some great tips there for people to think about. If you do have questions, please put them in the chat for Amy. And like I said, we'll get to them at the end if we have time. All right, I'm going to pass over next to Carmen. Carmen, I've known Carmen for a long time, and she's had a lot of a real interesting career. So Carmen, Please tell us about it.
Thanks, Elaine, and thanks, everybody. Great to be here. Look, I came to the third space by the road less travelled. I think I could say that. Honestly, when I was younger, I didn't know what I wanted to do as a career. I had lots of different interests. And I spent most of my 20s actually trying to avoid a career and traveling, really. But I tried teaching English as a second language while I was traveling, and I really, really loved that. So I ended up doing a graduate diploma in education and teaching. I was a secondary teacher in English and computer education in Melbourne. I worked in high schools and community ed and TAFE, and I found a job as an online materials developer. And that got me into instructional design. It was really a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. And from then, it was sort of a natural progression, really, into educational technology and learning design. So I worked quite happily as a learning designer and technologist and an educational design manager for many years, actually, at TAFE and then at UTS and at University of Sydney. And then I moved into an academic role. I'm now an educational developer at the University of Sydney Business School, and I've been doing that since 2020. So I guess that's an interesting career path to move from from teaching, learning design, and then into academia. And I guess the reason why I did that is because I studied all throughout that journey. I really, really like study. I did a grad dip ed in teaching with ICTs, and I did a master's of education, and I did a master's of writing. I am a part-time writer as well, so I've always really been interested in studying. So I guess in a way, academia was a natural fit for me. I love reading, and I'm always interested in how practice and theory mix. So I do have that really strong background in learning design and hands-on and making things, but I was also interested in the evaluation of that and how could I make it better and how could I use theory to do that, I suppose. And so I'm interested in how the two inform each other back and forward, theory and practice. So I think my technical skills and the long experience that I've had in the third space is really a big advantage in my academic role now because I really have that sort of underpinning practice. And I guess the skills that help me make that leap are very strongly rooted in a lot of the educational design work I did. So I really understand all aspects or from all angles education. And so I think also too, obviously liking writing and research has helped a lot. It helped me to get published in journals. So my advice is if you're considering a switch to an academic career, is that you really got to love reading and writing as well. I know a lot of learning designers are really interested in the evaluation part of it, and that sometimes that can be hard in terms of getting an ethics application as a third space practitioner. But I guess there are conferences and organisations that have really helped me to establish myself as a SOTL practitioner and then to do more kind of publication work. And so I think one of the interesting things about that is at ASCILITE is that it's a very diverse community and that you can actually do conference papers and so on and do pecha kuchas and posters and get a taste to see if that's something that you really like to do in the more academic side of things. I think the other thing to mention is the PhD. The PhD, and I can see Colin Simpson smiling there. He will totally agree with that. And I can't see Courtney, but she will be smiling and nodding her head as well, no doubt. Doing a PhD while you're working full time is quite the challenge. What helped me get through that was that I was really obsessed with what I was doing, was really passionate about it, and I think You really need that to get you through. And the other thing I would say too is that it was really worth doing it because what I do now brings together a lot of my passions. So it's the reading, the writing, the research, the education, the teaching, that all sort of comes together really in a really satisfying way. I get to do and I get to study all things digital, be creative in my work and my writing, and teach and learn. So it's sort of the whole package. My advice to people considering a change is really to find academic mentors. I had a lot of very strong leaders in my life that really helped me on that journey to become an academic, and I was really lucky to be supported by the ASCILITE leadership team. Really, I was an ASCILITE mentee, and that program really helped me. That collaboration really helped me get my first publication in a journal. And also too, I didn't have my PhD at the time, and I just reached out to somebody had a journal when they had an associate editor role going, and I spoke to them, and I actually got that role. So I think it's not necessarily a blocker not having the PhD to move into that role, as long as you're kind of on that path and you can you're starting a PhD or you've got a few publications. So I think it's always worth pursuing your passion, basically. And I agree so much with the word of mouth. That is so important. And with what Amy said about networking as well, and what Elaine said about the technical skills being really valuable. And basically, just being aware of how much you have to offer, having spanned all of those different roles. I think that's super important. Championing third space the professionalism wherever you can, and trumpeting it loud in avenues like this is really good, because these careers don't always fit the traditional career structures, and that's a good thing, I think. That's a really brilliant thing. And that's exactly why they're so interesting and important. And it's really, apart from the really luck and fortune I've had to meet good people as well, I think it's having those skills have really got me into academia as well. So that would be my advice. HERDSA, TELedvisors, ASCILITE, network, follow your passion.
Well, thank you so much, Carmen. That was a nice example of moving from a very professional focus to an academic focus within the third space, because I still see the role of academic developer or education developer is still third space. But Colin's got an interesting question for you in the chat, which you can answer in the chat, because I'm going to move on now to Courtney, who I also have known for a long time. Through ASCILITE, I think we first met.
Yes, absolutely. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Courtney. My background, when Carmen was speaking, I thought it was sort of similar to Carmen without the traveling. But I finished my Bachelor of Communication and Media Studies at like 21, 22. And I had a similar thing where I was like, I don't really know what I want to do. Do I want to be a communication specialist? And I just followed maybe what could be considered a somewhat typical path, where I got employed as a project officer on a SAF project, and then met the beautiful Rebecca Goodway, if any of you have ever met her, and she introduced me a little bit to learning design and moved on to a different role. So I became project manager, and then I went over to the library. So I was sort of dipping my toes in higher education. I think I just didn't want to leave. I'm so comfortable in education spaces. Like Carmen, I have studied. I don't think I've stopped studying. I think I've had 1 year off since I was a baby. So I didn't want to leave the university space. And it was in the library where I actually met Elaine. She was my mentor through the ASCILITE program, and she really kind of gave me the confidence to start applying for learning design jobs and sort of leaving Wollongong. I'm a Wollongong girl. I'm on Dharawal land. And I took the big leap to come to the city and work at the University of Sydney. And I stayed there working for BCD, Business Co-Design, in the business school for a while under Carmen and alongside Sarah Krask, who I think is in the audience, and Jess Tyrrell. And I got the opportunity to grow a lot. I got exposed to academia and got to participate on papers. I got to build things and get my hands dirty. And it was kind of there where I did my transition to a new industry. I took up a role in the School of Design at UCID and got exposed to human-centered design, which is something that had started for me in business co-design. We did a lot of work co-designing our work with our academics and our students. And when I was in the School of Design and Architecture is where I got more exposed to it as a career that was sort of outside of higher education. So that's where I took my leap to a new industry in a way, where I sort of left university behind and went to TAFE. I was very lucky because TAFE is still education, so I was still very able to be very passionate, but it gave me the opportunity to kind of broaden my skills outside of learning design and into more generic design. So the work that I did when I moved there was, they called me a customer experience human-centered designer, which is very, very similar to user experience design. But we're thinking more about the learner experience at TAFE New South Wales, how we can improve it. So there's a lot of research that we do, a lot of co-design workshops that we do with people across the business to really set our students up for success in TAFE. So I get to be exposed to not just the UX digital side of things, but also just generic, like shaping programs, shaping enrollment programs, orientation programs, all sorts of stuff that goes on. So that's sort of my story of moving to a new industry. While I've been at TAFE, I've been a project manager for some enhancement projects, and currently I'm acting manager as the customer voice program, which involves running a team of specialists or leading a team of specialists who collect experience information. So we run surveys and research with learners to support the business to have the right insights. So I get to do a lot of research. And then in the background of all that, I've been working away at my PhD. I think I started the same time as Carmen, and I still haven't finished, but I am trucking along to that. And as Carmen said, it is really hard to do it full time, particularly when you leave higher education. You go, what am I doing this for? Because you can't see that clear path between doing a PhD and then moving forward to an academic role. But it's something that I really enjoy just because I'm passionate about it, as Carmen said. Like I'm passionate about what I do in work integrated learning. So what skills helped me make the leap? I think definitely the fact that I was exposed to co-design and exposed to research, and I have a knowledge of research. So I had all of the tools in my toolkit to be a experienced designer. And I was really lucky to be in BCD, where we got exposure to a lot of the design thinking and co-design and getting that exposure to influencing multiple people. My advice, I think, is very similar to the advice that we've already heard, but think about your transferable skills. I remember when I was leaving saying to a colleague, oh my God, I have so much knowledge about Canvas that is it's just wasted. It's gone. I don't need that anymore. And it took me a little while to realize that, yes, they use Moodle and TAFE and I don't even touch it. But what I actually learned through building things in Canvas was, how to work with people, how to collaborate with academics and multimedia producers and to bring something to life. I learned how to structure activities. I learned how to make things pretty, like graphic design, all that sort of stuff. And that's flowed through to my current work, where I run a lot of Miro workshops where I co-design with lots of people, and I still have to build learning design materials to get them through that process and to get the information that we need out of them. And I still bring so many people across TAFE New South Wales together. I'm still in a space where I enable others and I support others. I don't get to own a space. I just get to be a part of the conversation. So all those skills came out of learning design. So I think I just needed that second to go, we have so many transferable skills as third space practitioners that can apply to any role, really. Project management, experience design, whatever it might be. My other piece of advice is don't be afraid to try. I kind of had an opposite story where the job that I got at TAFE, I didn't know the people. I sat there and thought, oh, I don't have this experience. They're not going to employ me. And I didn't make the connection. I didn't call my boss at the time, my soon-to-be boss, and make a connection. But I tried, even against what someone had said, don't do that. You have to go and get all this experience before you do it. And it worked out. I got brought onto a beautiful team. They saw the transferable skills that I have, and I've been given every opportunity since then, which is just my third point as well. I'm just looking at my notes, is take any opportunity that comes your way. So at TAFE, like I said, I started as a designer. I've been a project manager. I'm now the manager of the customer voice program with a brilliant team. I just keep saying yes to the things that come my way. So just don't be afraid to give it a go and to say yes when it comes your way. So that would be my advice. That's it.
Thank you so much, Courtney. That was really good, really interesting for me to hear a bit more of the story of yours since you left our fold. So thank you for that, and some great tips as well to add to the others that you've heard so far. So again, questions for Courtney in the chat, which she can answer, and we'll move on to Jess.
Thanks, Elaine. Hi, everybody. I'm thinking probably not a lot of people will know me, but I'm Jess. My current role is head of learning, and I work at an edtech company called Cadmus. So basically, we support universities in delivering high quality digital assessment at scale. So prior to joining Cadmus, I spent almost a decade working in English as a second language in higher education, but I was primarily at QUT, and where I was a unit coordinator and lecturer at the QUT College. I think I was always quite drawn to the intersection between teaching, learning, and systems. So, like in my role at the QUT College, I wasn't employed as an academic, I was a professional staff, even though I was, purely teaching focused in what I was doing. So, I think I've always been kind of third space in that sense. So my kind of story, I guess, but during the 2020 lockdowns, when we had that big sudden shift to online learning, I was actually using Cadmus to deliver digital assessments to students. So I actually knew quite a few of the Cadmus team already, and I was really loving what they were doing in the space that had a big kind of product overhaul and a big shift and really focused on student success. So that combined with, I think, that shift in delivery, that online delivery, and those possibilities that opened up as a result, gave me the pause to consider, okay, look, there are different career options out there, and I'm no longer restricted to the geographical region where I am. So when a colleague from QUT actually showed me a LinkedIn post advertising the job of a remote learning support manager at Cadmus, I made a few phone calls, sent over my CV, and then just kind of made the leap. So it was actually quite an easy process there. I was actually the first hire outside of Melbourne, where Cadmus is based. But now, the company has grown really dramatically, and we've now got teams all over the world. So I think that 2020 shift was so influential in kind of, our ways of doing things. So in my role, I was initially responsible for supporting academics that were using Cadmus for the first time. So things like training workshops, one-on-one support, assessment design guidance, things like that. But since then, I've become head of learning, where my role has grown to leading the global onboarding and training teams, overseeing account management of our university partners, and also supporting the research and development within the company as well. So it's been quite a big kind of move for me. So key skills. So there are a few key skills that really helped me to make that initial leap from, working as a, unit coordinator lecturer to working at an edtech. So the first one was my experience in designing assessments and also like understanding academic pain points. And that really kind of helped me to support new users that were using our platform. I could, I guess, empathize with academics who were experiencing some of that change fatigue that I think a lot of us have felt over the last few years. And I was able to work with people in a way that would produce value for them. It wasn't just work, it was kind of, very outcomes driven. That also kind of helped me as well to, I guess, champion the student voice and the teacher voice within the company. And that really has helped to kind of shape the product direction over the years. My teaching background also came in really handy in developing and delivering like product training sessions. And it really helped to kind of make those sessions quite practical, educative, and very outcome oriented. I think probably the most important skill, though, was the ability to be comfortable and flexible in ambiguity. Like that was a really big one for me. So moving from a very or relatively structured environment like a university to a startup where the change is constant, and the pace is like super fast. I think that ability to just be able to kind of shift and be agile was really worked in my favor. If anybody's considering a move to, an edtech company, like I've done, my advice would be to start exploring before you're ready to move. Always go and chat to people in, the industries, or reach out to people that that have kind of moved into edtech. And also, think about what energizes you. So for me, that was always, helping people and solving problems. And I think that's transferred really beautifully into, the work that I'm doing now. I mean, I was really fortunate in that I had known the company that I was, moving to. But if you're not in that position, I'd recommend, just kind of reaching out and engaging, having a chat with people via LinkedIn, as a couple of other people have said as well. I think to kind of add to, Courtney's point about, your knowledge and, what you actually have, like, don't underestimate the value of your context-specific knowledge. Like, I think there's so many things that you think that everybody knows, but, the world of higher education is very complex. So people who can, I guess, navigate the nuance of the universities are in demand, especially in like edtech spaces. The final piece of advice that I've got for professionals or people moving from a more traditional university into a commercial one, like an edtech role, like I've done, even though my role was very kind of focused on learning and training and, all of that kind of stuff, I was still essentially a vendor, trying to sell things to universities. And so that kind of, my identity really changed a lot with that. So I was no longer an academic or, a university colleague. I was, I was an outsider basically. So you need to kind of be prepared to alter your ways of getting things done. So you have to work really hard to, build the trust and earn the trust of the university colleagues that you're working with. Yeah, so I mean, to finish up, I often reflect on like the sheer volume of knowledge and skills that I've acquired over the past 5 years working at Cadmus, and I almost don't recognize myself sometimes. So it's been extremely rewarding in terms of growth. And, if you are thinking about making the move, as Courtney said, like, say yes to things, give it a go. It's like there's a lot of opportunity out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. Really interesting comment that you made about being on the outside. And I think people in third space often feel this, that we don't quite belong in any one space. We're in this separate space and we have each other, but we can often feel like outsiders or treated that way sometimes.
Yeah,
anyway, thank you. Fantastic. Please add any questions for Jess in the chat. And let's go on to our final, last but very not least, Naomi.
Hi everyone, I'm Naomi. I'm currently a senior educational developer at CQU with a focus on vocational education and training. And my career started out completely not in education of any form whatsoever. In fact, I rallied against it, having a mother who was a teacher and a sister who was training to be a teacher as well, and family members in teaching. I rallied absolutely against it, did not want a bar of it. So I was actually in government compliance. However, when I had children, I moved back. Thanks, Colin. I moved back to Townsville and had to give up my role in federal government. And while I was on my career break having children, I could feel my brain going to mush. And I actually connected with the Australian Breastfeeding Association whilst having my children, and had the opportunity through them to do a certificate in training and assessment, which got me into training in the vocational education space. Whilst I was on that career break, I had no direction whatsoever because my degree had been a public policy degree. It was very broad. It wasn't a profession-specific degree. I struggled with my identity as a career person. So I just decided to do all the certificates that I thought I could possibly do to get me anywhere into back into the workforce. So I did 2 Certificate 4s in breastfeeding education. I did the Cert 4 in training and assessment. I did the Cert 3 and Cert 4 in education support, hoping to be a teacher aide, and so on and so forth. I got my break back into the workforce, all whilst I still continue to volunteer as a trainer and assessor at the moment. All got back into the workforce eventually through various contracts back in government, but then those contracts ended, and through word of mouth, I got a project role in a payroll within a disability support organisation. Totally not my sphere, finance, what are you talking about? But it was a step back into, and I had an interest in disability support as a person with lived experience, and also having just worked in the National Disability Insurance Agency prior to that. Whilst I was in that role, the Workforce Planning and Development Officer role came up. Now, in that, I had noted from knowing the person that one of the requirements was a Cert 4 in training and assessment. So I went to the HR manager, stuck my resume in, said, hey, my contract's almost finished. I've got the TAE. Is there a spot for me? So that was my introduction to corporate training. I got that role and felt thrown in the deep end. As much as I had been a training and assessment, I'd been in training, I'd seen education from my mother's point of view and things like that. Corporate training was a completely different kettle of fish. In vocational education, you're given the learning objectives, you're given the elements, you're given the performance evidence, it's all there, you know what you've got to do, and then you can create the content and design the content accordingly. Corporate training, there was no such thing. I was being asked to come up with communication skills workshops, to train support workers in OH&S, in manual handling, in medications, in things like that. So I found that I was rudderless and just had to make things up as I went, pretty much. One of the things that I found is different in corporate training to what we have in vocational education and also higher ed is the lack of access to subject matter experts. All of a sudden, I was supposed to be the subject matter expert or find the knowledge from the subject matter experts online or whatever, because we had limited resources to pay for subject matter experts to come in. So during that time, I came across the Certificate 4 in Learning Design and Facilitation, which actually did that. So it was created 5 years ago because the corporate world saw a need to have a certificate to help with learning design and facilitation in the corporate world. With the training and assessment certificate, it's fully focused on vocational education and training. This is where I found the skills that I needed that would eventually help bring me into the higher education. It helped me with project management. It helped me with learning design, student experience. I'd had a very different range of student experiences doing online training in my 10 years of training, and found some did it really well and some did it not so well. So that became my passion. As a result, when a third space role as a digital support advisor came up at JCU, I jumped at the chance to help students with their student experience, because I'd seen great teachers put some very poor content up for students and for student experience. So fortunately, with my knowledge from my Cert 4 in learning design and facilitation, I was able to bring those skills across, and the skills I'd learned through corporate training and vocational education training across into the higher education. One thing, advice, I definitely agree with Amy. and Carmen about the networks that you have. As part of my Cert 4 in facilitation, it's run through and the Institute of Learning and Performance, and they have a network. You become a member of them. The webinars that you have access to, the informal learning lounge. So once a week we get together. There are practitioners who have been training in corporate and vocational education for 30 plus years. There's many people who have their own corporate consulting businesses, and being able to have access to them to bounce ideas off. And all of that has helped me to grow and improve in this third space. Joining TELedvisors and ASCILITE as I have, I found that very beneficial as well. I'm kind of now just recently moved into this role at CQU, and kind of now I feel like I'm straddling another third space, in that not only am I straddling the academic and professional, but I'm also straddling the vocational education, higher education space, because my role is in the dual sector university, but primarily focused on vocational education and training. So I'm kind of coming full circle from my initial introduction into education through my vocational education and training into the third space. But definitely use your transferable skills. Everyone said it. There are so many skills that are transferable. Don't necessarily look at job titles. Job titles can be deceiving. Workforce Planning Development Officer, how is that learning and development sort of mixed? So look for those, like actually look at the job responsibilities, because it may just be named something completely different. Workforce development, learning and development, performance, those sorts of things are what you should be looking for if you want to get out into the corporate space. But yeah, jump on those professional bodies, AITD, Institute of Learning and Performance. If you're looking at vocational education, then VELG is a good professional body. All very helpful. And just follow LinkedIn, look for those organizations and jump on any of their free webinars and things like that. Highly recommend it. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you, Naomi. Such a nice link back to where Amy started from, actually talking about, well, I've actually written quite a few words down as all of you have been talking. And I think there's some real common overlaps in what you said. So that idea of making connections and using that word of mouth to help you look for job opportunities. A love of learning came out from all of you, and that networking opportunities. Volunteering was a word I heard across all of your talks, which was really interesting, and that's a way to build your skills, and that idea of opportunity, taking the opportunity, saying yes to things. All of those things really resonate with me too. Now I'm going to just quickly run through the last couple of slides, and if we've got time at the end, we'll take questions. But still, add your questions for everybody, please, in the chat. I had prepared these slides before that I heard their talks, but a lot of what is here really is exactly what they've been saying. So, you know, the things, if you want to build your career and even change your career, it's about building a profile for yourself. Look at what opportunities are available. Is it in subtle? Is it use of social media? The same things don't have to work for everyone. There are different kinds of fellowships, like there's the CMALT, which is about learning technologies, if you're interested in that, as well as the HEA fellowships, for example. A few people spoke about coaches, mentors are really important. People spoke about here, you know, understanding the difference in these roles. So having a sponsor, a coach, and a mentor, you could have all three of those, but they actually play different things, different parts in your career. And so look into that, look into what you need at different times. Leverage networks, that's already been spoken about. Obviously, this is the ASCILITE network, but HERDSA, ACODE, they all have great networks there too. And really about think about where your position is, how you're positioning yourself, and how do you make yourself more visible. So through all of the above, This will help you with your visibility, give you voice so that you're able to speak about yourself. Amy said in the chat early on, it's about selling yourself. And unfortunately, we don't like that. Jess mentioned that too, about becoming a vendor and a salesperson. It probably doesn't sit comfortable with most of us about ringing our bell. We're not great at that, but we do need to to grow those skills. And this is a great network and a safe space to do that. So just finally from me, I do have a very basic reflection worksheet for you that I'll put into the chat, but do reach out, connect with any of our speakers today or myself. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. I've also got a website, which I put the QR code up for. And yeah, leverage those mentoring networks. We've got the community mentoring program in ASCILITE, CMP. We've got a women in academic leadership mentoring program. We've got a women in professional leadership mentoring program, and there's plenty of others out there too. So that's pretty much it from me. Got 2 minutes left. If anyone's got any burning questions they'd like to add before we go. Or it don't have to be burning, they could just be gentle. No. All right, well, in that case, thank you very much, everyone, for coming along today, and especially our presenters. Please give them a big round of applause for sharing their journeys and being so open to do that. It's great to meet you all. Thank you.